Hello, welcome, Cabbage here. This is not going to be a regular series of videos, but let's look at the first week performance of Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis on the JP server. I made a video talking about the launch of the game, I'll link to that below. I am looking at JP sales, but I'll also be looking at community reactions from both JP and Global. Let's look at the sales ranking for the first week of the game. And let's think about the launch compared to Nier Reincarnation's launch. I'll also talk about some specific impressions about the game I got from watching folks play through. And I will risk the slings and arrows of the internet and turn comments on for this video, because I have some specific questions I would like answered. 1. How do you like the game? And where does it fit in with your previous experience with Final Fantasy VII? Did you play the original and then feel nostalgia in Ever Crisis for the original lines and Super D4 models? Did you play the remake, and did you enjoy this kind of new take on a remake? And do you feel like your previous experience with Final Fantasy VII and all the spin-offs and all that, did it enhance or has it kind of made Ever Crisis sort of obsolete for you? Question 2, how does this compare to Nier Reincarnation? And on this, I only want to hear from Reincarnation vets. And furthermore, please, just broad strokes. I don't want to read an essay on the nitty-gritty details of a game I will never play. Just tell me, like, which battle system you prefer. Which gacha system do you prefer? Which do you think is more generous? Which do you think is more welcoming to free-to-play? Which is more expensive? How much pressure do you feel monetization-wise? And then how do you feel about the availability of co-op versus PvP for the different games? Big picture stuff like that I would like to hear about. Question 3, is there space for collaborations in this game? I don't know exactly how the game works, but it looks like weapons are linked to characters, and I wonder if you put like Squall in the game, for example, would it make sense for him to have Cloud's weapon preferences? Or would Squall need like a whole new batch of weapons just for him? And finally, question 4, if collaborations were a regular thing in this game, would you enjoy the Final Fantasy VII world full of like Final Fantasy Tactics and Nier Automata and Demon Slayer and One Piece? Ever Crisis strikes me as having a much more specific world in the game, as compared to, say, Dissidia or Record Keeper. So I wonder if collaboration characters would kind of not match the world. Alright, and then here is a chart of the sales ranking performance for Ever Crisis the first week. We see that the launch day was not that great, around 50. But the rest of the week picks up, and then I said this before in the previous video, but I attribute it to the game debuting so late on the launch day, about 6 in the evening. But since then, performance has been pretty steady. It's hanging in there in a top 15 territory. I'm sure Swimsuit Tifa coming out a few days after launch helps with the steadiness, but I'm guessing that positive word of mouth is also bringing in new players and spenders every day. And we can talk about that word of mouth. I've been looking at message boards and App Store reviews and comment sections. And of course, there are always the usual Square Enix haters, but a lot of other people are enjoying the game. Nier Reincarnation did not have good word of mouth at the beginning of the game. I talked about that in the previous video as well. But it did take number 1 in the sales ranking on the release day overall, which is a big deal in Japan, and a bunch of JP players flocked to the game because of that, because Japanese folks feel like more safe in investing if they see other people investing in it. As I also said in the previous video, Square Enix's reputation, especially with mobile games, is not good at the moment, so that might be preventing people from spending. Next, we can extrapolate the results out, see what Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis could bring in for the month of September, and if it would make more than the launch month of Nier Reincarnation. Ever Crisis came out the 9th, so that is a week into the month, but Nier Reincarnation came out in the middle of the month, but it still brought in like 7.5 million USD. I'm very sure that that covered the 2 years of development costs accrued, so that gave a lot of leeway to Reincarnation, and is absolutely a reason why it is still going on today. But getting back to Ever Crisis, if we take what it earned this week and multiply that by 3, we'll get about 5 million USD for a launch month, even with an extra week over Reincarnation, so I think that gives us an idea of what a crazy debut Nier Reincarnation had. It took the mobile gaming world by surprise, including the developers and publishers, I'm sure. And so I'm going to call this debut week by Ever Crisis solid, but not great. Final Fantasy VII should be the better selling IP than Nier, but Square Enix is definitely in reputation rebuild mode, and again, people are hesitant to put money into a game from a company shutting down so many other games. Like, how long did First Soldier last, which is another Final Fantasy VII property? Less than a year. But considering that, this week is not bad, and as long as the developers maintain consistency, consistent releases for events and game modes, consistent quality of life updates, consistent developer communication, and consistently addressing bugs quickly, that should reassure users that they aren't throwing their money down a hole, and as more people spend in it, the more other people will feel reassured and then spend in it. Quick side note on Square mobile games, I hear people say Nier Reincarnation or Octopath Traveler will shut down next, but I think there are a number of others in more danger, like Engage Kill or Tawatsugai or maybe Schoolgirls Strikers. Nier Reincarnation, as I laid out in my final shutdown predictions video, may be tied to the Automata anime, which would artificially extend its lifespan. But I've also heard a theory that if and when Ever Crisis becomes a steady performer, that is when they will shut down Reincarnation, and presumably move over the resources from one game to the other. They are by the same developer, Applebot. However, while debuts are important, and then Nier Reincarnation is probably going to have the better debut than Ever Crisis, in the long run, the ability to maintain is more important, and that is ultimately more difficult to pull off for the developers. Nier Reincarnation did not prove to be good at that, but Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis has the potential. I want to say this game has better bones to support a game than Nier Reincarnation. At the end of the day, I would say Nier Reincarnation is a glorified play novel, which somebody recently said to me kind of like as like an insult, but I think it's an accurate description of the game, although they've made a mighty effort to put gameplay on top of it. But again, I don't know anything about how the gacha is set up in Ever Crisis. I know it's based around weapons, which might demotivate pulling, but I've also heard about stamps, which is how you get costumes. I don't know how they work, or if they encourage spending or discourage spending. And I hear about the pop-up limited time packs that are generally in Chinese developed games, and I don't know if that inspires spending or demotivates spending. I don't know how the lack of PvP hurts spending. What I have seen is that it is easier to get first-time pulls of rare stuff, but it seems harder as compared to other games to max something out. But as always with mobile games, the key to getting folks to spend is if they feel there is a good reason to do it beyond collecting. I'm not talking about value, which global users fixate on. I'm talking about if there's content in which to really use the new characters and weapons. And if the game is too generous and free-to-play can do everything at the same pace as spenders, that will demotivate spending. If the gacha stuff that whales pay and pull for has too short a lifespan, that will demotivate spending. Alright, so I think that'll wrap up this video. I'll do another earnings report at the end of September, see if the projected income matches the actual. And then let's do another earnings report at the half anniversary of Ever Crisis. And then here, I'll give my impressions on the one thing that stood out in watching folks play the game, and that is how much effort was put into the summer limited time event. Holy crap. Original story, original field, original boss, original costumes, and even original arranged music? I don't know if I'm wrong about that. The story was lighthearted and had no bearing on the lore or canon, but it was legitimately touching and was fully animated. I think that last part is very important. A lot of mobile games don't include any story at all with limited time events, and fewer still animate them. That takes work. I was shocked at the high quality. I wonder if it's because it's going to be the first limited time event, but if the developers can keep up that level of commitment and execution, which is going to be expensive, then that is really going to keep players engaged in the game. Story does not directly generate sales, but it can definitely lead people to sticking with the game, which leads to more potential sales, which is the second most important metric behind actual sales. And to end, I will say that I am jealous of Ever Crisis. I'm not jealous of the folks playing the game and enjoying the game. I could, start playing today myself. I'm jealous that Final Fantasy VII gets such nice next-gen games like Remake and now Ever Crisis. I say I want Nier Reincarnation to be my last mobile game, but if they ever gave Final Fantasy VI this treatment, I would go into it whole hog. Okay, that'll do it for this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again. Take care.